What on earth is going on with Ferrari? Now, the Belgian Grand Prix itself was actually quite a snooze fest. Mercedes have got such an advantage on the entire field that even the small hope that Red Bull gave with Max Verstappen just wasn't really ever going to amount to anything. It wasn't really anything to get that excited about. Very much dominated by Mercedes, by Lewis Hamilton, so wasn't really much of a race going on. A little bit of action in the midfield. Battle for 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, I think, was okay. It turns out it might be a little bit hard to pass on Spa-de-Francorchamps. Didn't know that. Thought it was a bit more of an easier track to pass at, but yeah, not really the most exciting race. In my opinion, I don't really have much to talk about for the race itself. But one thing I did want to talk about and take this opportunity to discuss is Ferrari. This is the single worst performance I've ever seen them have in the time that I've been watching Formula One. Back in 2014, when the V6 Turbos came in, they didn't have the greatest time or the greatest start, but were at least in the points, fighting for points. Not many points, but were at least in the points and fighting for the points. So to be pretty much plumb last, I don't know what's going on with that car. Leads me to have a couple of questions, if I'm honest. Firstly, they need to sort out their management. That seems to be the biggest problem. And I remember back a few years ago when McLaren were having the issues they were having with the Honda engine, that it's almost like when one thing goes wrong, nothing can go right. Problem on top of problem on top of problem on top of problem. So I'm not surprised that everything's falling apart. Ferrari's strategy and their strategy team has all been a bit iffy for the last few years anyway, so that's not surprising. But the pit stop issues they had with Charles Leclerc, having to put more, I think it was hydraulic fluid into the car and his stops, making his stops a lot slower. Just how does that even happen for a race team with such heritage and history as Ferrari? So the problems do seem to be at the top, coming down. I don't think it's really the drivers. It's really difficult to tell how good the car actually is, because with Formula One at the moment being such an engine focused and an engine heavy formula, so much so I would call it an engine formula, if you don't have a very good engine, the rest of your package really doesn't matter. It's very clear to see this with McLaren a couple of years back when they had issues with the Honda engine. It didn't matter how good the rest of their package was, the engine just held them back and dragged them back too much for it to really make any effect. So whether the chassis is bad, whether the aero is bad, whether the handling is bad, it's very difficult to tell with the Ferrari, but the fact that the engine is bad is really, really pulling them down. And I didn't think we'd ever see them right at the bottom. So to see them right at the back end, the first time I've ever honestly believed that neither of them would get out of Q1. So I was very impressed to see both of them out of Q1, but not surprised to not see them progress through to the top 10. What's confusing me is to talk about the Ferrari engine. Obviously, there's this under-the-table deal they've had with the FIA about the legality of their engine last year, and it was this time last year after the summer break that Ferrari came out of the gates with this amazing engine. And I've actually seen a quote from Toto Wolff that says that Mercedes just didn't know what they'd done, didn't know how they'd done it. So Mercedes pushed themselves further and above and beyond to try and match their engine to the new Ferrari engine to keep up with them. How much you believe that or not, I don't know, but obviously Ferrari were fighting a lot closer this time last year than they were this year. Now, my understanding was that it was whatever they put on the car this time last year that was illegal, and so you would expect that when the FIA told them to take that off, they would at least be where they were last year before putting the engine modification on that they did at Spa last year that was, now we know, illegal. So what confuses me is how far they've dropped down the order, because that car wasn't terrible last year, at the beginning of last year. It wasn't great, it wasn't the fastest, it wasn't really keeping up with the Mercedes all that well, but it was keeping up with the Red Bull, it was fighting in the top 3 teams, it was fighting in the top 6 then, with the other 2 front runners, and it did have the potential to get podiums, albeit their strategy ruined a couple of those, and some engine failures ruined a couple of those early on last season. So it wasn't a bad car, the engine wasn't bad, and the Haas and the Alfa Romeos didn't suffer that bad either, like they are now with the current engine. So that leads me to believe that whatever they put on the car last year was not the only thing that was illegal in that engine. And now now the question marks for me start to arrive. Because if it's something they put on the car after 2014, when they really struggled with the V6 turbos, because their first year of V6 turbo was bad, really bad. Not as bad as this, funnily enough, but it was quite bad. And then 2015, they seemed to turn it around and it looked better. For the car to now be so far back on the grid, and really struggling with pace, really struggling with straight line, really struggling to keep up, it does lead me to question how much of their engine in the last 5 years of development was actually illegal. And that's why they're seeing such a suffering. Because if you put the 2014 Mercedes against the 2020 Mercedes, that 2020 Mercedes is going to look, this 2014 Mercedes looks slow because of how much development there's been in the last 7 years. The cars are so much faster now. So even though there's been development by all the teams over the last 6 months of last year, I cannot believe it's enough that Ferrari is suffering so bad for taking off their last big update on their engine. So let's say the big update gave them 7/10 of a second. I don't think all of the teams that are now ahead of them have found 7/10 of a second in that 6 month period. So it leads me to believe there may be more than just what they added to the car last year that was illegal, and the investigations that went on last year uncovered a lot more stuff that maybe they shouldn't have had on the car. This is all just like assumptions, this is all just guesswork. I know nothing, I have no idea. I'm just trying to work out how it's gone from so good last year, pole position, fastest lap, winning the race, to barely even making it to the end of the race, right at the back of the pack, fighting for 13th and 14th. And the other cars with their engines are suffering so much too. So I'm just trying to work it out. I'm just, this is my opinion, and I offer you to give me yours in the comment section down below. Let me know what you think the issue is with Ferrari, whether there's more than sees the eye with this under the table engine deal, and maybe that's why it's been so hush-hush and Ferrari were really key to keep it under the table. Because if it is more than just what they added to the car last year, but maybe things they've been developing on the car since 2014, if something like that is illegal, then that's a whole 6 seasons worth of racing and winning and championship standing that could be under threat. So if that's the case, I do completely understand why Ferrari are very keen to keep it under the table. And it does make a lot more sense why they're so bad at the moment. And like I said, this is the worst I've ever seen Ferrari perform. So something's got to happen, something's got to shake up, because it isn't good to the sport. I won't say Ferrari is Formula One or vice versa, but a lot of Formula One fans are Ferrari fans, and it does hurt the sport to see Ferrari doing badly, because Ferrari still is, whoever you are, the team of Formula One. You think Formula One, you think a red car. Whether you're a Mercedes fan or a Hamilton fan or a Vettel fan or a Red Bull fan or whatever, they are just synonymous with each other. It's just the way they go, because it's the team with the most heritage and it's the team with the most history in the sport and success. Because Mercedes have been very successful in the last 7 years, but that's not a scratch on the last 50 years of success Ferrari have had. So to see a team that prestigious, if you will, crumble as it is not fun to watch for anyone. I mean, I'm not a Ferrari fan, but it still hurts me to see the team right at the back, because they are front runners. They should be at the front. They shouldn't be mucking around at the back, fighting and squabbling for 1 point. That's just not okay. Something needs to change at Ferrari. I personally don't think their frontline management, or the pit wall, if you will, is strong enough at the moment. I don't think they're focusing in on the right things. Their strategists have been bad for the last few years, as I said earlier. I don't think Binotto's strong enough to run that team. I think he's great technically, but running a team is very, very different than just designing the team and understanding how the car works and understanding the strategy. There's a lot more that comes with that, and I don't think he's strong enough. Really, I feel they need someone very tenacious to come back into Ferrari at the top. Someone like Luca de Montezemolo, who didn't worry or didn't mind, lighting fires under people's butts to get them moving, to get things done, and packing people away in their boxes when things weren't working. I mean, Enzo Ferrari used to have an error cupboard, and if they had something go wrong with a car during a race weekend, he would take that piece, he would bring it back to the factory, get the guys to assess what the hell had gone wrong with it, and then it would stay in this cupboard. So every time you had a meeting in there, you would see, these are our mistakes. This is what we have to do better. That whole kind of mentality needs to come back at Ferrari. And I do not deny that the people at Ferrari are working their absolute hardest to try and work out what is going on and fix the problem. But it doesn't feel like they're doing enough. And that sounds really, really harsh to say. And I do apologize because it is really harsh to say. But from an outsider looking in, you want to see more fire in people. You want to see more, no, this isn't good enough. We're not just happy with 15th. We need to fix it. We need to sort this out. We need to be working around the clock. You want to see the drivers a little bit more punchy, a little bit more like, nah, I'm not happy with this. This ain't okay. What can I do? Let me get in. What can I do to help this situation? Yeah, I just want to see a bit more from the entire team. Rather than just coming out every week and being like, oh well, we did the best we could with the situation we have. Fans don't want to hear that, of the team and not of the team, of the team and of the sport. No one wants to hear you just being on the fence. I remember when I used to support Fernando Alonso when he was in Formula 1, and when he was at McLaren, there was a time where he qualified something like 11th or 13th or something. I can't quite remember what it was, but he came out and said it was the best qualifying performance he'd ever had. And I went absolutely mental, because that's certainly not the best a driver of that caliber should be doing, nor should he be proud of that result. It's great to see the progress the team had made, yes, but it's still not good enough. And I feel like at the moment everyone's just singing the right tune and boosting morale, which is very, very important, don't get me wrong, but I want to see a bit more fight from Ferrari. I want to see them come out of the gates hot and ready to come back strong and sort the problems out that they've got. Because at the moment, with no reg change next year, it's another 12 months of this. Nothing changes next season. If they can't fix it now, they may as well write off 2021 as well. Monza's coming up, which is their home race. That's not going to be good for them. There's a lot of long straights there. It's a very engine-heavy circuit, so that's really going to hurt them. They're probably going to be quite glad there are no fans there, because it certainly would be a bit of a red but not in the right way kind of weekend, red with embarrassment weekend rather than red with pride. And then they go to Mugello, the only team on the grid that will have any sort of relevant data to that circuit, as that is their circuit, and I think it's their test circuit they use as well if they don't use Fiorano, but I could be wrong there. So they are already at an advantage with that one over the other teams. Whether they can make that work, I don't know. I don't feel good for Ferrari moving into the next two races. So they're probably going to be glad there ain't too much tifosi there. Although, Mugello will be the first race where we actually have race fans at the track again. So, it'll be exciting to see what happens there, and I will be sure to come back in to Track Talk and talk to you about that when we know more. But do let me know what you think's going on at Ferrari at the moment. Let me know whether you think Binotto needs replacing. Let me know whether you think the team's fine, but they just need to sort things out. Let me know what you think about the legality of their engine. Was that just from the last 6 months? Or was it potentially more that they had to take out the engine, which is why the Ferrari engine runners are suffering as they are. Let me hear your opinion right down below, and I will certainly return with responses as I always do. I love reading your comments, especially on these videos, because I love discussing Formula 1, as I've said before. But anyway, thank you so much for hanging out with me today. It's been an absolute blast, as always. If you enjoyed this video, go show that like button some good old-fashioned love. And if you want to support the channel, go hit subscribe and ring that bell so you don't miss next time I upload a video. Stay awesome, and I will see you all in the next video! I could really do with Ferrari sorting their stuff out ahead of next season, because my driver's off there next year, and considering I've just suffered about 4 or 5 years of rubbish with McLaren, I really don't want to start doing that again.